Okay. We're just going to touch on it for the most part because you can't really do a whole lot about it. What if I own a tract that looks like that? Page 11 in your book gives you examples of really, really nice tract descriptions. Everything looks fantastic. Easy to figure out. Flip the page. Meets and bounds. Meets and bounds. Think of meets and bounds as describing a tract of land using GPS coordinates. They're going to start at a point. Well, they're going to pick a point. In this case, they probably pick the northeast corner of the northeast quarter. And they're going to say, go south about 2,000 feet. They'll have an exact number. So they'll say 2,025 feet. And then they're going to say, go north 87 degrees west to a point about right here. And then they're going to say north 75 degrees west up here. They're going to draw this tract based off of those call-outs. Every time there's a direction change, no matter how minute it is, will get its own call-out. And it's going to be measured like a compass. Degrees, minutes, and seconds. So if we're going, beginning at a point in the northeast corner, northwest quarter, say beginning at a point. You'll see a lot of fences. Fence south, 0 degrees west. 2,025 feet. Fence north. Start out pointing north from this spot right here. North. 85 degrees west. So facing north, we'll go 85 degrees west. We'll run, we'll call that 1,700 feet. This spot. They're going to describe that whole thing all the way to the point of beginning. And they're going to say, you're lucky how many acres it is. We're not going to cover meets and bounds a lot. You just need to know that when you come into something like this, it's meets and bounds. And you'll need to know how to identify your degrees, minutes, and seconds. Degrees? Same sign that you see for degrees anywhere else, be it temperature or direction. Minutes, apostrophe. Same as feet. Seconds. Quote. Or two apostrophes, however you like it. Same as inches. These suck, for lack of a better term.
So, is there a computer program to determine?
There is. There's lots. There's iPhone apps now, iPad apps that you can use that'll call these out for you. There's programs called Deepwater that I use still. It's probably not a good idea. The thing is outdated and it's finicky, but once you know how to use it, it's really, really handy to have. And it gives you your acreage and everything else. Why these things are so terrible is because you have this tract right here, we'll call it tract A, and it might be C. Estimate it's probably around 55 acres. But once you have this one, well, now you're going to have more meets and bounds tracts. Because there's no way to give us nice little perfect rectangles in here. This might have, the south half of the south half of the northeast quarter, but then you're going to have a nasty meets and bounds tract for the rest of it. Party A owns tract A, but decides he's gonna cut out a piece like that for his nephew or his brother or whatever. So now you have tract A, lesson accept tract B, that looks like this. Meets and bounds tracks suck. What I've been running into a lot lately for northern Oklahoma is people who have a perfect square for the southwest quarter who decide, describing it as beginning in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, thence running in a southerly direction, south 0.04 degrees east or west, so almost perfectly south, to this corner. And they draw all the way border around that section. For some reason, instead of just calling it the southwest quarter, they've now created a meets and bounds track. Typically what I think that is they're either following the road, or the cyclometer, or a fence line, or whatever they're doing. They thought they knew better than the survey system that was in place. So now it is no longer a nice 160 acres. It is now going to be 160 acres plus or minus. And whatever plus or minus is left over, well, they just hung on to it somehow, on accident. They just thought they knew better. That's why we don't always like lawyers, because they get fancy and do things that they don't really need to do.
Right.
Yes?
Once the description is such as that meets and bounds, does it always have to be referred to that same description? You can't go back to that southwest corner.
Sure it could. However, if Party A grants that meets and bounds description to Party B, Party A still has what's remaining of, let's say, Southwest in this case. And the only way it can go back to the Southwest quarter is if Party A go ahead and grants the remainder of that Southwest quarter as what's left over, or as the Southwest quarter to Party B. And then Party B has it all again, and they can call it whatever they want. But generally, once it's split up into meets and bounds tracks, it's going to stay in a variation of a meets and bounds track. I like it when it comes back together. It's just very rare.
Do you see much of the old language, the rods and the?
You do. Not as much anymore, but on the older instruments, you'll still see it. And in the book, it tells you the difference. Like a rod is nothing more than 16 and a half feet. But they'll say, 12 rods. Well, 12 times 16 and a half is a number. Or they might say 16 chains. Well, chain is 66 feet. You just got to do the math. Because you turn that stuff into your client, they don't want chains and rods. They want feet. It's Old English. You're going to run into that stuff all the time. Heretofores and where art thou's. Well, probably not that so much. But, Old English. There's a reason that lawyers write the way they do when they prepare their legal documents. They don't do it because it makes it legal. They do it because it's difficult to understand. It takes a lawyer to understand a lawyer's document. It keeps them in business. There's some schools out in California, go figure, California, that are, as I understand it, teaching law now in layman's terms. So lawyers will be preparing documents like we would, If I'm selling something to Jesse, I'm going to say, hey, Jesse, here's my TV. Give me $100. We're going to draw it up. I'm not going to say, heretofore, a grantor, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to say, I, Brian Ayers, I'm selling to Jesse, no last name, my 27-inch color television for $1,200. It's a good deal. 2 TVs. It's not going to go over too well. There's not going to be a whole lot of lawyers that are going to be pleased with learning how to write things out in layman's terms, because they're going to run out of business pretty quick that time. Because once you have that document, you're going to be able to read it and say, you know what, I can write this stuff. This isn't a big deal. One thing that really makes a document legal is signatures. Say, I know what I'm doing. Something changed hands, and we wrote it down and we signed it. Everything's good. Meets and bounds tracks are awful. Page 14 has an example of, even though it's a meets and bounds track, it's still pleasant. It's just a triangle. Just 3 straight lines. There's no meandering curves. There's no double backs. It's still pretty nice. And it's just one meets and bounds track. But what they don't say is that one meets and bounds track creates at least one more meets and bounds track for all the lands around it. The fuzzy looking starfish or blowfish or whatever that thing is. I've never seen a meets and bounds track like that, and I don't ever want to. I can't imagine why anybody would do that.
How about the oak tree?
Yeah, is that an oak tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it looks like a nasty meets and bounds track to me. You'll see those. You'll see them quite a bit. Not so much in Oklahoma. I've only seen maybe a couple in Oklahoma. But the further east you get, you'll see the meets and bounds tracks that say, starting at the quarter section point of section blah, blah, blah. Fence northeast 200 feet to the oak tree,
Or to a rock?
So
or to a big rock.
what happens when that gets, when the oak tree dies?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, you just have to hope that they put a marker. They drove a stake in there or something, you know. I've never been out on those pieces of property trying to hunt it down. I'm just going off of the legal description. And from there, it's out of my hands. My job is in the courthouse and on my computer. If I need to verify something out in the field, it's typically to see if there's a pump jack going. I don't care if there's a tree out in the yard somewhere. Not my job to be getting shot at by angry farmers with rock salt shotguns. And you'll see them. That's meets and bounds. That's about all we're going to touch on. There's not a whole lot you can teach somebody about meets and bounds without taking a couple days just focusing on how to do your call outs. If you run into them, you'll know. You'll be sad. All right, let's do some practice on tracks. What does this semicolon denote? Separation of tracks. Draw those for me. Give me the acreages. I better do it too.
should recognize that.
There's more map pages. You guys need some more? Somewhere. Oh, okay, there. There's a pencil sharpener in the back as well. Please don't take my pencils when you leave. Tired of sharpening them? Who's got it?
Nina has it.
Yeah, you're just. They're all the same except one.
Yeah.
Can you see again? Okay, excellent. Well, you didn't raise your hand. You kind of got experience in the business. You get a lot of teachers and former, not necessarily realtors, but people in real estate game nowadays. I guess those are, well, real estate. Obviously, we know why. Teachers, we know why as well. They've been getting screwed for years. So. You shouldn't have any problems. You got that one right? Yes.
I did.
That's a. No? Yep. You're good so far. Oh, are you telling them? Do I need to take your phone away from you? You'll get it back after class? Maybe. Check B and D. A is great.
That's meets and bounds. Yeah.
Sorry?
The acres.
Yeah.
It's
Way off.
This whole thing is 640.
Oh.
This will be 3 more.
It's real nasty.
How you doing, Willie?
Yeah.
Hey, Brandon, can you draw that on the board for us? Because I just tore up that, yeah. Did you write it down on yours, or did you just draw it?
Can't remember the descriptions you gave.
Sorry?
Never mind. Was this one C?
Yeah, I wrote a little too big. But it was perfect.
West and northwest.
Northwest, northwest, northeast. What was this one?
Northwest, northeast, northwest.
Northeast, northeast. Due southwest, northeast, northeast.
This one, A, you go northeast. Big one, then you go northwest. This one, then you go northwest right here. B, northeast, northeast. Northwest. This one, south half, north half, south half of the north half. Bang, boom, boom. Northeast, northeast, southwest.
Okay, when you're reading them, you'll read them from left to right. So you'll say southwest, northeast, northeast.
Right.
You got it.
Going from
Anybody have anything different?
What's wrong with reading them right to left?
Reading them right to left? Well, if I read it right to left, northeast, northeast, southwest, that makes it seem like it's the northeast of the northeast of the southwest. When you're writing it, you can do it from right to left. But if you're reading it, you're going to do, what are you going to say? You're going to say the northeast.
It's just.
It's harder just to use the little word of in between there. I don't know what to say to say that this is a bigger piece of this, and this is a bigger piece of that, and it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's not a piece of.
And they're all 20 except for one thing.
20? Sure.
Or 10 to 40.
Right. 10, 10, 10.
160. 80?
Yeah.
Try to do it again.
We just had to read it from right to left.
When you're planning it out,
Read it left to right.
when you're actually drawing it out, it's a whole lot easier to take the biggest portion first, and then the smaller portion, and then to the smallest portion. But if I'm reading it, if I'm telling somebody about my track, I will never say, it's the northeast quarter, and then it's the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, and then it's the southwest of that. I'm just going to say southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter. See what I mean? Why it's a little confusing? Okay. We'll occasionally see things like the west 100 feet of the northeast quarter, which is pretty easy to grasp because it's on the western 100 feet. Just start on the western edge of the northeast quarter. You go out 100 feet.
Aren't you in the northwest corner?
Yeah, I am. See? See what I mean by easy it is to make mistakes. So you start on the western edge of the northeast quarter, and then you go east 100 feet. It's the entire western 100 feet of the northeast quarter. It's not specifying you're only going down a portion. It's the entire western 100 feet. Figure out your acreage. You could do the math on it, load it into a system, but how many feet is this? 2640. 2640 times 100 gives you your square footage. Divide by 43,650. 560. Give you your acreage. So try to do that in your head.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
2640 times 100.
2640 times 100 to give you your square feet, and divide that by acreage. How many acres, or How many square feet in an acre? 43,560. You don't have to do it. You also might see we'll say the southern third. So how would you figure that out?
By the distance of 3, and then it's a correctional section.
We're just going to say it's just a standard section. And if it's correction section, the fun thing about correction sections, feet don't change. Your footage doesn't change. Even though it might be different acres, it might be only 630 acres, it's still 5,280 feet square. Doesn't make sense, does it? Don't ask it to.
Oh, that's true. Did you just say that it's still that same distance?
Yeah. They don't change the footage because that would be a nightmare for everybody involved. All they do is they just say in a correction section, even though this is still 5,280 feet, we'll say this is section 1. So it's the north half of the north half, which are your lots. They just say that this is like less dense or more dense than this guy. It's more or less acres than 40. But the footage doesn't change. Odd, huh? Not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Just know that a section, a full section, as long as it's not being cut off by some kind of official boundary, is always going to be 5,280 feet. So what's 5,280 divided by 3?
1716.
1716?
1716.
1760. So you're going to start here and you're going to go, what's it times 2? We'll start here actually because we're doing the southern third. So we're going up 17,
35, 20, 35, 20.
60. Chopping it off.
You wouldn't start down that.
Oh, no, you're right. This isn't of that. It's down here. See? You're calling me out when I make mistakes. What are you doing? It's about what it looks like. If you're drawing your own maps, you don't really care about exactly how it turns out. However, if you're putting it in the system, if you're putting it in an Excel spreadsheet, you're going to be able to divide it up into thirds pretty easy. What it amounts to, though, is your legal description better say southern third. Because this track description is what's important. It might be off a little bit on your Excel spreadsheet or on your drawing, however you do it. But it better say the southern third. How many acres would the southern third be? No,
213,
213.33333 acres. 640 acres divided by 3.
Oh, the decimal side of this section.
You'll see those occasionally. Not very often. You will see things like, the western 80 feet of the southwest quarter. You'll see that kind of stuff all the time.
And so with that decimal, you'd be going out 6 decimals. Is that what you just said?
For which? From the acreage?
213, do you go out?
I'll usually go out like 10 decimal places and then let the Excel spreadsheet round it to 6. If you just go 6 and it rounds it, it might be off a little bit here and there.
So full section is always 5280 feet, correct?
5,280 feet by 5,280 feet. Or 1 mile by 1 mile. Hey, Mitch, up there and give us some examples
Uh,
of whichever one you wanted to write out. If you want to do track description, or if you want to plat it and then have us do the track description. Pick one. Either map it or call it out. See you later. There's refreshments in the back if somebody noticed the Coca-Cola dispenser.
let's see. This will be the southeast, of the southwest.
Now, don't say it like that.
Yeah, because we're gonna read it this way.
Right. Because if you have to use the word of, you're going to use the little guy of the big guy.
Okay. So it's gonna be the southwest quarter of the southeast section.
Southeast quarter
Quarter.
of whatever section you're in.
Right.
By the way, you're giving away all your answers.
Okay.
Just write it up and let them do it.
Okay.
Put a couple more up there.
Why don't you just draw one and then let us come up with the.
Or you can put up the tracks as they're described, and then we'll
let us
we'll
draw
fill in
them
the
out.
maps.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
What section are you in? Is it a correction section?
Good answer.
It's a whole lot easier if it's not.
Yeah.
People can just call it out if they want.
Southwest.
How many acres?
Can we act like that's a correction section?
Sure. Which correction section would it be? It doesn't matter.
8,
Section 8 is not a correction.
9,
Section 9 is not it. 1 through 7,
6.
18, 19, 30, and 31.
19.
19, then it would matter because lot 4 would not be 40 acres exactly. So you would have two separate tracts in that case. You would have lot 4 being 38.25 acres, and then you would have southeast of the southwest. Or combined, it would be the southeast of the southwest and lot 4, and it would be 78.23 acres. That one would matter if it were a northern correction section. Otherwise, if it were still section,
That would
what'd you
be
say?
lot 2
7?
of the northeast of the northwest, what he just marked on there.
No. If this were in a northern correction section, this would be 3. However, this would be the northwest of lot 3. Which starts getting nasty, but if that's, say, 38 acres for lot 3, you got to quarter it. What's 38 divided by 4? I don't know either. But you got to do the math on it, and then you'd say, done.
Are you saying hypothetically it's lot 3, or because it's in section 3, it's lot 3?
If this were in, say, section 3, then this whole thing here would be lot 3. But if we're just doing this portion of it, then it's going to be the northwest quarter of lot 3.
So if it was like that, then you wouldn't have to say, northwest, right. We we would just say lot three instead of breaking it down all the way.
Sorry?
So we would just say lot three, northwest corner of lot three, rather than the northwest quarter of the northwest.
Right, because lot 3, we don't know what the acreage is right now, but let's assume it's 39.5 acres. Well, this is no longer 10 acres if it's a quarter of 39.5 acres. It's going to be, what, 9 point something acres?
Do you see mistakes where people forgot the word lot?
You betcha. All the time. All the time. A lot of times they'll just call that on accident. We'll call it the northwest of the northeast of the northwest. Oops. Well, you got to figure out the mistake and how it's made and then fix it. Don't get too hung up on correction sections. Most important thing you need to know about correction sections is how to identify which sections are correction sections and what they're used for. What are they used for? Just for the curvature of the earth. It's just a random number I threw up there.
Oh.
We don't know how big the lots are. We have no idea the size of the correction section until we look at the survey. So if I say, how big is lot 3? Your answer is, I don't know. I'll find out. We'll check the government survey. You can have a seat. Sorry about that. I need to stand up here all the time. Pretty good on descriptions. We're going to come back and hit those again. People tend to forget. So far, nobody's written like the northwest half or anything, but I think I might have drilled that in pretty good. We don't write the northwest half or the southeast third. We don't want to get yelled at. Let's move into title. Our main focus when running title is conveyances. Conveyance being transfer of ownership of something from one party to another. Matthew, you probably know this. What's the difference between real property and personal property?
Real property is referring to land,
Basically land, not always land. Easiest way to differentiate the two is personal property can be transported. It's transportable. Real property is not. There are exceptions. You can move a house and things like that. And once a house is on wheels, you're not going to typically call it personal property. It's still going to be real estate. However, technically, once you put it on wheels, it is personal property. Minerals are real property. Oil and gas underground is real property until it's brought up to the surface, piped up, in a gathering system, put in buckets, whatever you want to do it, then it's personal property. So, if I own all of the minerals for section 10 of 10 north, 6 west, I own how many acres?
Let's see.
How many acres if I own the entire section? If I own it in fee, I own all of the surface and all of the minerals. Fee simple is the term they use. I don't know why. It probably has something to do with Latin. A lot of the stuff we see is going to be in Latin. They love their Latin. I own all of the surface and all of the minerals. Section 10 of correction section? Okay, 640 acres. The surface, real property. All of the minerals, real property while they're underground. When I brought up, they became personal property. But we as individuals, we don't ever deal in personal property when it comes to oil and gas. Oil and gas are considered minerals. now, but they weren't always. Remember what year it was that gas became recognized as a mineral for Oklahoma? Had to be around statehood. Thanks.
I think it was, I'm thinking Arkansas, I think it was 10 for Arkansas, so,
1910?
yeah.
Okay, Arkansas, about around 1910. The states are all going to be a little different, but for Oklahoma, Arkansas, if you had a lease in 1905 in Arkansas, and it was a mineral lease, then only the things that are going to be considered minerals at the time of the lease being signed are going to be leased. So oil is a mineral. Gas was not considered a mineral at the time, therefore it wasn't leased. The rights wouldn't have been given. In standard conveyance, we have some terms that are very important. Get rid of that too. We don't need that confusing people. Grantor. What is a grantor? Person losing something. Person who is losing something. Grantee. Person receiving something. In an instrument of conveyance, who do you think needs to sign the document? Grantor. Person losing something is the one who needs to sign it. Doesn't matter if the grantee signs it. They don't have to sign anything to accept a portion of any conveyance. We'll get into one caveat to that was introduced last year in Oklahoma. Thanks. A little later. It has something to do with a type of instrument that I hate anyway. So, other important parts of a conveyance are legal description, which we've covered that. What is being conveyed? What the grantor is losing. And signature, signed by grantor. These are things that all instruments of conveyance will have if they're done right. Effective date. Might not be called an effective date, might just be a date when it went into effect. But a signature date isn't always going to be the same thing as an effective date.
But it can be.
It usually is. Usually is, unless it specifically says effective such and such date. But the effective date is what we're looking for. Signature date is your effective date if there's no other date that's specified. We have reasons for our dates being important. In Oklahoma, nothing is really official until it's filed in the courthouse. Those of us with experience, what is a race state? No one?
First one to file gets it.
That's a first to file state. They're not the same. Sorry? It's based on your date of signature. Your signing date. It's effective. What am I doing here?
Whoever signed it first.
Sorry?
Is that what it is, the race state?
Yeah.
It's whoever signs it. Whoever turns it in signs it first. Just sign it.
These two are separate. fix that, sorry. Scroll myself off. Race notice. State. And a first to file state. Some states are first to file, some states are race states. Race notice. Oklahoma's both. First to file means no matter when it's signed, no matter what the signature date, Party A owns everything. Party A grants to Party B 100% everything he owns, and he also grants to Party C everything he owns. He just granted 200% of what he owned. Well, first one to file wins. Might have been done the same day, might have been done 2 weeks later, might have been done a year from now, doesn't matter. The first one to file in the courthouse wins. The race notice. What do you think? It's going to be off of the dates. However, Oklahoma is both. What does that mean? There's a hierarchy. Signature date will always take precedence unless there's any kind of confusion. If there's any kind of conflict between the two, then it's the first to file. This protects everyone. If Party A signs a lease in January of 1950 with Company B, and it's signed January 1st, and it's filed January 2nd. What happens if Company A comes along, signs another lease with Company C, and they predate it? We'll call it 11/1/1949. Well, now this signature, even though it's a lie, predates this guy, which would make this null and void. That doesn't seem fair. So anytime there's a conflict, they're going to go off the first to file. This guy filed first. You get it. You got to protect the people. Somebody would have gotten screwed. Otherwise, what's to stop me from just leasing every one of you mineral owners for 15 years ago? Nothing. I had to come up with this because it was happening all the time. We had an instance where somebody in a company we worked for didn't really make the mistake. It's not really their fault. Company A, mineral owner A, signed a lease with Company B for 100 acres, we'll say. And it was in probably around 1970. 100 acres. 5-year lease, we'll say. 5-year lease. Expires 1975. 6 months after the expiration date, call it 1976, Company B had Party A sign an extension to this oil and gas lease covering an additional 2 years, which in essence would make this a 7-year lease. However, it had already expired when the extension was filed and signed.
So what happens in those 6 months?
There's no litigation covering that. Our client could have said, you know what, that's BS, and all we got to do is take them to court to prove it. But our client said, no, we don't want to deal with that. The guy who said that this acreage was open and not leased as of this day would win in court. There's nothing to say. There's no way that they're going to say that this lease is still active. I think. I don't know that because it hasn't been litigated upon. It's never. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So do you. So do you.
But Company B kept paying landowner A,
You bet.
mineral rights A, all that period
Sure.
So it was really just a oversight on paper.
Right, but the problem with that is 30 years later, we come along and we want to lease mineral owner A because we think they're open based on the fact that this is BS. 2-year extension is not possible on something that's already expired. Otherwise, what's to stop me, once again, from coming along and go ahead and backdate instruments saying I'm going to go ahead and extend these leases for 35 years to cover it real quick? See my point? There's litigation that covers things like the race notice and the first to file, but there's nothing that covered an extension because it needed to be litigated on. There was no precedence for it. Question?
It gets paid, I know it's a little bit involved, but when it goes to horizontal drilling, because don't they come in like, they'll come on this person's property and they'll drill over and get mineral rights on someone else's property, but they
No, they're not allowed to go ahead and just take it. They can't drill to underneath somebody's property that's not leased.
Oh, really? So
Now-
you go horizontal, they pay the person?
Only.
They will get those minerals, not necessarily on purpose, but they can't drill those minerals. They might just get it over. Minerals are fugacious, meaning they're like water. They flow. They take the path of least resistance. So if you suck all the minerals out of this spot that you have drilled and leased, that you have the rights to, well, all these minerals over here, they might want to flow into that area. They drink your milkshake. Anybody seen There Will Be Blood?
Yeah.
There Will Be Blood. I'm not old enough to be around back then, but I tend to believe that that's pretty much exactly how it was back then. Now, people forget where oil and gas companies came from. All those old movies that you see about the railroad companies and how vicious they were, blowing up people's houses and murdering and all kinds of stuff. I don't know how accurate those are, but I do know that the railroad companies didn't just disappear. They became oil and gas companies. They saw the future. They saw the money. They had the rights to a lot of it already because they were blowing up houses and this and that and the other. I doubt it was as bad as they say it was. I'm sure there were portions of that were pretty bad. But railroad companies became oil and gas companies. Smart. Lots and lots of gray area in this business. That's just an example of it. We're going to come back to this example a little while later. Because while that extension of a lease really wouldn't affect anything that we saw, and that we could just say, okay, it was leased, no big deal. There's another issue that we'll get into later on that makes it very detrimental to what we were discussing. Let's see. We know what a grantor and a grantee are. We know what our dates are. We'll have issues with the race and the first to file. First to file is exactly what it sounds like. First to file. If you had two deeds, let's call them a dresser drawer deed. That's what they are. I granted, or my grandma granted to my mom in 1960. Everything she owned. And my mom had this deed and didn't go get it filed in the courthouse. Just put it in the dresser drawer or the pantry or wherever my mom puts things. Wasn't ever filed. That deed is still valid. It's still a signed conveyance. Just hasn't been recorded. And all my mom needs to do, or I need to do, is go ahead and get it filed. But if there's an instance where there's conflict, because my mom also, or my grandma also grants to, my sister, all her interest 30 years later. Well, who owns it? Based on the dates, my mom would own it. But who's going to file? Who's going to file first? There's conflict. So whoever files first.
Does it need to be filed in the county record? Should be
It
filed?
does. It does. Oklahoma dictates that you will file in the county of record that your property is in for it to be recognized as official. Once again, it's still a legal conveyance. You don't have to, every time if you sell your TV to your friend, you don't have to go file that in the courthouse. But it's not real property. It's personal property. Big difference.
So regardless if, say, your mom has the deed signed, your aunt files first, what about the signature that your mom has?
I'm sorry?
The signature that your mom has, signed from your grandmother.
What about it?
So that's just
gonna be in title.
You're going to need something that's going to clear up that title. You're going to call that clouded title. You might have different terminology where you might call your mom a stranger in title. But either way, there's litigation, there's precedence that shows you exactly how. In this case, it's going to be a first to file because there's an issue. You can't have cloudy issues. You can't have, well, I don't really know. You got to have it solved in one way or the other, and that's why they have the first to file and the race notice and things of that nature. Dave, tell us about Kansas a little bit, if you don't mind.
Leasing? Yeah, I'll tell you. When you lease in Kansas,
First to file.
kind of have a situation. Mineral owner leases to Company A. Company A waits quite a ways out before they file that lease. Company B comes in, talks to mineral owner, and negotiates a contract. And mineral owner decides, well, you know what? I haven't been paid. My lease isn't filed. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sign with you guys. Well, Company B gets the lease signed and validated, gets the payment. Company B is the valid lease.
You guys all hear that? Does it make sense?
Because Company A waited quite a ways, and mineral owner kind of played dumb, signed with Company B, and realized, well, I haven't been paid. I'm going to go ahead and go with Company B. Well, Company B isn't really held at fault because mineral owner A went ahead and signed the deal, and Company B is the first to file.
If Company B is aware that there is an existing lease on the mineral owner with Company A, then their lease will not be valid. Company A's lease will be valid when it's filed. However, how hard is it to say, I didn't know about it. Nobody told me. Now, if there's some kind of paper trail or something.
There you go. Explain better, but it's the same thing.
All right.